Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Stephanie and I am working my way through my Snagga box currently, and today I'm going to be focusing on the very adorable, in my opinion, Smasha Squig, who I had so much fun painting, and I think this is actually the first mini I've painted in a really long time that came out exactly as I had envisioned in my head. So overall, just really excited about painting him and showing you guys. I enjoyed the whole process immensely. As usual, I use a lot of different techniques, from using oil paints for the smooth blends, stippling with acrylics for this worn leather look on its saddle, rust effects on the metallics, and more. So I will be making a separate video for the knob that we'll be writing on top, and that will be out within a couple of days, so definitely stay tuned for that. But for today, we're going to be focusing on this Smasha. I hope you enjoy, and let's get started. So I primed the whole thing gray. I'm just going to pop that knob right off, and I'm taking Uriel Yellow. I will be painting the eyes first because it's just low stress. I feel like you don't have to worry too much about getting the color in other places because it doesn't really matter. So I'm just making sure I come at this from every angle, cover the eyeball completely, and then I'm taking Abaddon Black. And the way I like to think of it is when the black is on my brush, I try to imagine myself cutting the eye in half and making sure I get from the top of the eye all the way to the bottom. And then I take white and I'm just adding a little dot to make it look like there's a little glare. These eyes are bigger, so I'm able to do that pretty easily. And then I'm going to be taking this turquoise color and base coating all of the skin. I'm using a pretty big brush for this just to get it done quickly. I suppose you could do this with an airbrush. I don't get along with my airbrush, so I don't use it, but I'm just using a big brush to base coat it as evenly as possible. And then I take a smaller brush when I'm working around the eyes just to make sure that the cleanup is efficient and I'm not like getting a bunch of blue all over my hard work on those eyes. I'm taking Iraqi sand and I am painting the belly, the underside, the back of his legs, his chin. You can pretty much just see where I'm putting this color, and I'm making it so that the line between the cream color and the turquoise is as straight and neat as possible. And I'm just putting it on. This is going to be the base coat that we're going to use for the next step, in which we start blending with oils. And I am going to spend a little bit more time talking about my use of oils because I've gotten a lot of questions on Instagram and on here as well about how the heck I use oils without any mixing medium. So this is what he looks like before doing that. I did let him fully dry, and then I'm just massaging this tube of purple oil paint so that when it comes out it is like it's not just oil, it has the pigment mixed in as well, so it's a good consistency. And then I am just taking that straight out of the bottle and placing it into the deep parts. I did not use any mixing medium, and people have asked, does it get globby? Well, no, it doesn't, because I am just using the slightest little bit. And after applying it to all of the deep parts, I actually work it out. So I don't want to call it blending because I'm not mixing any colors. I'm just evening it out and making sure that it's thin and not globby in any areas. So as I'm doing this, you'll see my brush kind of go out of frame for a second. All I'm doing is wiping off any excess paint from the brush so that I make sure that it is smooth and those blends are looking good. And then that's pretty much it for this step. When I get onto the smaller areas like his face, all I'm being mindful of is not to get it in the eye, but I'm pretty much just working it in there like crazy. And then after I've worked it into all of the deep parts, I actually take a paper towel and wipe off all of the high parts. So it's just like the most efficient and easy way to get the dark color into all of the deep parts without spending forever manually placing it in. I just kind of slosh it around all over the place and then take a paper towel and wipe off the high parts, and it's very, very quick, and I think it looks really good. So you can just see me do that here. And the oil paint is obviously still wet, so this is very, very easy to do. and overall just a very enjoyable method. I mixed blue, green, and white in an even ratio to get this color, and this is going to be my highlight color, and I am just dotting this along. So it would be bad if I had put this color on before spreading out my first color, but because I spread out that first color first, there is no residual oil paint all over. I am just putting this on, and then I will be blending it out the same exact way I did with the first color. And yeah, I continue to do this, just applying it. This part is honestly so fun, you guys. I don't know if you can tell, but I'm having the time of my life doing this. It's just so fun and really good practice at identifying the high parts and where the highlights would be. Whether you're working with oils or acrylics, that's an important skill to have. So this has been amazing practice for me. I'm just placing it on, and then I take a separate brush that's dry and fluffy, and I begin to blend those out, and it's just really satisfying. I really like it. Same as before, I am wiping off excess, so I'll do a little bit of blending. I take my paper towel and kind of wrap it around my brush and almost pull the pigment off, and then I go back in for more blending, and that's just so that this light blue color doesn't take over, because I obviously still want the dark parts to be dark so that we have that level of contrast. For some of these smaller areas, it's less of a blend and more of a blotting motion. Like these areas with the small surface areas, I am just taking my brush, and rather than rubbing it around all over, I was just like pressing it in kind of to make those lines a little bit more transitional and not as stark. So this is what he looked like at this point. I am taking brown oil paint, and I will be doing the belly in the exact same way. So I'm not going to talk your ear off about it really. It's just like I put the dark color into all of the deep areas. Before adding my highlight color, I work the dark color out a little bit so that there are no globs, there's nothing thick, it's just in the deep shadows. And then I take my highlight color, which in this case is a white that I mixed with this brown. So I took this brown way up to a very light shade of it, placed it on all of the high parts, and then just blended it out the exact same way I did with the blue part. I get a good amount of questions about how long oil paint takes to dry, and it depends. So me using oil paint straight from the pot, it'll take about I want to say 24 hours before I feel comfortable handling the mini enough to paint the other parts of it. You still don't want to be like touching all up on it, but after 24 hours, you can pick it up and work on the other parts without anything getting messy. If you use liquid, which I've done a few times, if you're in a rush, it'll dry within half an hour. So it's really not a huge dry time if you are down for using products like that. I personally just don't like the harsh chemicals. I have a bad reaction. I get really, really bad headaches, and I'm often painting in the same room as my son, so I just don't like using those. So I just don't. And so far I haven't had any issues. I mean, it's been completely fine just using straight from the pot. So I'm just blending this out, and like I said, this part is so satisfying. I love blending out the highlights. It just makes me feel really good, and yeah, just very enjoyable. So moving on to the metallics, I will be taking lead belcher and doing a solid base coat first. This is about to be the easiest and most efficient metal recipe that you will ever see it, and it looks so good in my opinion. I experimented quite a bit with different versions of it, and this is the one that I finally settled on. So after applying lead belcher, I go in with Nuln oil. I wait a while for it to dry, and then I do a second coat of Nuln oil, which makes it just look really grungy and like dirty and old, which is exactly what I'm going for. This is Retributor armor. While I was waiting for that Nuln oil to dry, I'm just going to be doing the bronze parts of the mini, so his head plate and then the little thing he has on his back, which you'll see in a second. I'm just going ahead and painting those while I wait for the Nuln oil to dry. And then I take strong tone and do 2 coats of strong tone over this. So I do one, let it dry, and then do a second one, and I was really satisfied with the way that it looked like old dirty bronze, which came out perfectly. Back to the main part of the metal, I'm taking this steel color, which is 1 shade lighter than lead belcher, and I am dry brushing it over the parts that we did with the lead belcher and Nuln oil, and I'm dry brushing it because the dry brush deposits the color a lot more smoothly than if you were to try to edge highlight this. And I found that if you try to edge highlight metallics with a lighter shade of metallic, it can look okay to the eye, but then when you take a picture, the lines look really harsh and you can see the brush stroke, so I try to avoid that. And then I'm taking Typhus Corrosion, which I think is my favorite technical paint of all time, and I am just placing this on selected areas that I want to draw out. I'm not putting this on all of the metal because I don't want to get like desensitized to the texture of this, so the clash between this and the regular metal just makes it look really cool. I'm taking a couple highlight colors. I chose Corn Red and Sky Gray, and I'm just going to be painting some of the wires and little things like that to make this area pop. And I am choosing red just because it contrasts well with the mini overall, and I'm just trying to break up the look of it a little bit. And then I finally take Dry Rust. This is a technical paint by the Army Painter, and I am placing this on the bolts. I didn't want to go too crazy with this because I feel like this is one of those things where less is more, so I'm just putting it on the bolts. This does layer really well, so if you apply it and then wait for it to dry and then put another layer over top, it looks really good and that texture really stands out. And then I am painting the steel parts of his little thing, so I'm painting every side from one angle, flipping him and doing every side from the other angle, and I do this for all 4 angles. It's the most efficient way that I found to get these areas painted. This is German black brown, and I am base coating the saddle with this as carefully as I can. And yeah, this is pretty straightforward. I'm going to be going for a worn leather effect on this part, so just getting back to these basic acrylic techniques after doing all of those oils is really nice. And I will be taking these 2 shades of brown, basically just darker brown and lighter brown. It doesn't really matter which ones you use. And I got this really old split brush, and I am going to be stippling these colors starting with the darker brown and just stippling them along the highlights, doing layers and layers and layers, and trying to just make it look really worn. I always keep my old brushes for things like this because you don't have to worry about messing up your good brushes, and the frayed old split brushes help with the stippling effect a lot more. And I'm just taking that lighter brown, mixing it slowly and gradually into the darker brown and bringing it up higher and higher. I probably, if 90% of this wasn't going to be covered with orc butt, I probably would have taken the highlight up even higher, but because most of it will be covered up, I didn't spend a tremendous amount of time on this. I just wanted the detail to show through a little bit, especially on the strap that goes around the belly, so that's what I did. from this point, I'm just completing all the little details. This is Abaddon Black, and I am just painting this portion of the banner that's sticking up off of him. I also paint the center part of the banner with this. I take a Shabti bone, I hope I said that right, and I am going to be doing all of the plated areas. So this includes the majority of the banner as well as the little plate that's going around his body. And then of course using that same color to paint the little stitches on the saddle. I felt like painting the stitches really brought this whole section together, and I was really happy with how it was turning out at this point. So I'm just taking Lead Belcher again and getting some of those areas that I missed when I was doing my first sweep of metallics. And then I am taking Corn Red yet again. We're going to be doing the war paint. So this is an older, slightly frayed brush. I am just kind of sloshing it around. I just want it to look like an orc did it, you know? That was an exfoliation sponge that I'm using to take a Shabti bone again and place that over the red that I just did to make it look chipped. If you don't have an exfoliation brush, then you can just use an old frayed brush. You can get a very similar effect. Finally, I'm taking this turquoise color and green and picking out all of the little warts that he has, and this is the final look. I deeply regret not doing more gap filling on this guy. I'm very weak when it comes to gap filling. I just don't have the patience for it, but I'm really happy with everything else on this mini, and thank you guys so much for watching. I will see you in the next one.